Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to the Circling Seattle Sports podcast. This is the 148th episode of the show itself and the 44th installment in the Seattle interview series. I am here with Jason Babin, obviously, as you can see on your screen today. Second team All-Pro in 2011, a two-time Pro Bowler, 2010, 2011. 12-year NFL veteran, second team All-American 2003, two-time MAC Defensive Player of the Year 2002, 2003, a two-time first-team All-MAC player in 2002, 2003, those same years, all at Western Michigan. How have you been doing, Jason? I know that you've been in the Realty game. What else have you been up to in your post-NFL life?
Really, for me, it's been great because I got a little more time per se if I can allocate towards being dad. And I have three boys, so I spend a lot of my time with youth sports and doing activities with them and the family.
Absolutely, that makes total sense. So, getting into the earlier years here, what ultimately got you into the sport of football? Was it a family member? Was it your father? Was it, someone, a friend of yours? How did you ultimately get into playing the game?
I think it's a combination of probably all three. Honestly, I was a bit of a troublemaker as a young man. So sports were definitely a good outlet for me. I mean, I played all sports. Even as a kid, I played baseball and I played football, wrestling, track, any sport where I could get some energy out was definitely good for me. I think that's how my parents looked at it. So, and it kept me focused from, trying to behave and get good grades.
Did you ever consider taking any of those sports, to the college level? I mean, I know you lettered and were state champion in wrestling and as well as lettering in track. Were those ever something that you considered taking further, or was there always kind of a tunnel mindset?
Honestly, none of them sports. I guess college really wasn't on the table for me. In the short term, I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. It was kind of like that was my deal. I wanted to do that, and I signed up for the Navy. But I got bad asthma and some other medical stuff, and they didn't even let me in. So
Oh.
I took some time off between high school and college, and I don't know, just hung out, worked, and did a little traveling. And some of the coaches kept calling me. So eventually, a guy named Jim Knowles wore me down. I went to Western Michigan.
So, with that call coming and the scholarship offer, was there any other school that, even relatively came close in your mind, or was Western Michigan kind of the one that, once that call came through, it all just made sense?
No, I took some unofficial visits and visits, even to some bigger schools. But I guess my goal wasn't to go in the pros when I made my choice. I wanted to be, honestly, I wanted to work with my dad. He owned his own company, did some small developing, electrical company. So I grew up with him working, and I wanted to be a part of that. So being close was a big decision for me.
How did you ultimately approach your time at Western Michigan? I mean, obviously, in addition to your defensive accolades, you had three blocked punts and had three receptions for 55 yards. Were you just trying to put yourself out there? I know you talked about the energy that you had as a kid. Was it just kind of getting out on the field and contributing any way that you could?
Yeah, I guess I was one of those guys that I enjoyed special teams, even as a starter, because I wanted to make a difference in the game. I'm just a highly competitive person. So any place that I can step in and help the team win, I was like, I'm your guy. So most of my offensive play was blocking. I didn't. I think the few passes were just a little thank you, a little love.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it seems what I can garner from you is that you just kind of like to let your work speak for you. Uh, what did it mean for you to be inducted into the Western Michigan University Athletics Hall of Fame in 2014? Was that sort of just a recognition of the work that you would put in, or was that something that meant a lot to you?
I think it obviously meant a lot to me, but not something I really even had on my radar, especially when Miss Beauregard called me. But it's definitely pretty cool to be recognized for your efforts and your hard work. Even though there was a lot of people keeping me on the right path and helping me get to where I needed to get to.
So on some of those rosters that you were on, I noticed there was a few NFL players that would go on and play in the league. What was your relationship like in particular with teammate Greg Jennings?
Greg was a little younger. Him and Tony were, I think, the same. Tony Sheffield was same grade or maybe right in there somewhere. But they both Michigan guys, which was pretty cool. So I didn't really get to know them, in the college experience as you get to know some of your, good buddies. But we definitely, don't stay in touch that much, but there's some events from time to time that we our paths cross. So it's cool to see other guys from your school out there. Greg's killing it right now in the sports broadcasting world.
It's always really cool to see some of these older rosters and just realize who might have crossed paths at some point. Uh, and then, so what was your NFL draft experience like? I know in talking to a few guys that have gone on the NFL, some had really bad experiences with how the whole weekend went. Some really enjoyed it. How was that experience for you?
Mine was great. I mean, I'm always been the kind of person that put myself in the driver's seat, and I make decisions for myself. I think they wanted me maybe to go to New York, and I said no. I'm going to be at my hometown with my friends and family. So it was exactly what we wanted to be. We're all hanging out and celebrating, and then we had an early flight in the morning.
So jumping over to the NFL, how do you look back on your time with the Texans? I know Houston had, from what I remember, was freshly a team. I know they came into the league a little bit later than most. You on the same roster as guys like Mario Williams, Andre Johnson, D'Amico Ryan. So there was talent on that roster, but I know things weren't always the easiest. How do you reflect on your time with Houston?
Well, if you would ask me the same question 10 years ago, my answer probably would have been much different. As you know, our record was in my first year was 1-15, then we were 4-12, and then 5 and I don't know. I can't remember. They weren't great while I was there. And it really honestly had me questioning a lot of things, including myself. And looking back, I realized just what we were missing was that culture. We didn't have that culture that's been perpetuated because they were trying to create it from nothing. And it's a tough task. Even sometimes you can catch lightning in a bottle, but you even look at Jaguars, they're still struggling with creating like their identity and their culture, who they are and what they're about, their mission, visions, values, and beliefs. So to answer your question, I'm very appreciative of my time because it's made me the man, even my time in Seattle too. I know we'll get to that next, but those two, weren't if you look at them just on the surface, weren't the best moments when it comes to stats and experience and playtime, but they were the most important.
I appreciate that answer. So we're going to take some different stops in the NFL road here. I know this one, I'm sure you've heard this tons of times. What do you remember from that infamous moment when you held up the locks of Andre Ellington's hair? Was that just a sort of, hey, what is this? I mean, what goes through your mind when that's playing out and when you find out the social reaction after that game?
Well, the first part of your question, I mean, when I played football, or when I did play football, it was, it's almost like you can kind of take the mask off. You can be a gladiator, and just play just with reckless abandonment, hit people, and you're applauded for it. So it was one of those that was just kind of, in the moment. And of course, people that know me, I've played to the crowd a little bit for sure. You know what I mean? I enjoyed that aspect without a doubt. But when it comes to the social aspect, I mean, honestly, I could really give two shits. You know what I mean? What people think or don't think. I do love poking the bear from time to time on social media, of course.
So following that 2011 Pro Bowl season, did Tennessee fight to bring you back, or did Philly's offer just seem better to you? I know that free agency, with the deal that was offered, might have seemed better. You had a good year with the Titans. What happened in that offseason?
So honestly, I wanted to desperately stay, but if you recall, that was the year Jeff Fisher was getting let go. Like it was pretty much a done deal, even though he hadn't, been let go. And he's like, listen, I don't want to sign you here, and then you be a square peg, a round hole. If the new staff is not, you're not their guy. Like, he told me, like, it's not experience that you want. It's like, if I was staying, we would be in the mix, and it was a great team. It was a great place to live. I mean, we honestly we had a pretty decent year. I mean, obviously the quarterback situation with Vince kind of went off the rails, but it was a cool place, and it was definitely on my list.
So in looking at, that other end of tenure with the Eagles, I know that from what I can reckon, it was sort of a changing in the guard. They wanted to get guys like Brandon Graham and Vinny Curry in, I guess, for younger rotation. How did you look at that release? Was that something that I guess now you look at as like, hey, maybe they were they're looking for younger guys that want to go in a different direction, or is that how you were able to see it in the moment?
I mean, who knows what the ultimate catalyst or the thing that, said, hey, we're going to get rid of you. But obviously I was, on the older side, but obviously went on to play, I don't know how many more years after that, 4 more years after that. And I just think, it's just the nature of the game. You can't be a little bitch about it. You got to smile and say, thank you very much, and move on.
So, I don't know if there is any one thing that helped attribute to your longevity in the NFL, but do you have anything that kept you going? I mean, your time in the NFL sometimes, I think, quadruples the average amount of time that a standard player plays in the NFL. Did you have any secret or motivating factors that kept you around in the league as long as you were around?
I would say consistency to my regiment, and always, willing to learn how to improve it. And I got to be around some great guys. I mean, when I was in Seattle, probably the darkest time of my career, I was around Patrick Kearney, and he's an all-pro guy, and his agent, my agent were the same. And I'm like, well, shit, Patrick's got to figure it out. I'm gonna do what Patrick does, and I stole a lot of things from Patrick. I mean, after being there with Patrick, I mean, he slept in a hyperbaric chamber. So guess what I did? I bought a hyperbaric chamber. Patrick ate at a certain time every day and worked out a certain time every day. Guess what I did? I watched tape with him. Worked out with him. There was things that you can pick up, from other people that are really good. And that's a technique that I still carry on to this day. Whether it's when I started my cattle division, I found guys who were really good at raising cattle. I started my real estate division. I hired some of the best real estate people, to come work for me. And basically, and one of the sayings that we have here is it's R&D. It's rip off and replicate. If it works, we're going to do it. So, and then just being consistent with it, doing it every day, all day. And there is no off season. You kind of have to live like an Olympian and embrace it instead of fighting it. And once you kind of give yourself to that notion, it's like when you're training and pushing yourself to the limits. If you just lean into the dark side, the pain, you can go so much further. It's just kind of the same concept. You got to enjoy doing it.
So that's something, I guess the first aspect of what you were talking about, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, just being able to adjust and, be able to go with what's going on and really accept the changes that are happening. Because that's something that I look at with a lot of our teams here in Seattle is teams don't adjust a lot of the times, and it's why you fall behind. Being able to pick different things up. I like that aspect of what you were talking about.
Well, I mean, it applies in everyone's life. I know we always use a sports analogy, but I mean, I coach high school down to youth because I obviously have 3 boys. But there's hey, some years I'm like, shit, I want to would like to run this defense, but we just don't have the dudes to run it. So why would we run it? Yep. This is what we got. This is what we're gonna do. It's just in life. We're like, hey, you know what? Like in real estate, one of my agents like, hey, I'm trying to get listings and door knocking is not working. Like, okay, well, let's change our approach. Let's do some other activity, So being able to adapt and have that willingness to adapt and that want to is, like I said, is part of longevity, and really just longevity is just success, stripped down.
So I don't know if you're able to just single out one here. Maybe you can. What organization would you say treated you the best over your career?
All organizations were really professional. I mean, I can't say anyone's weren't professional. Some were extra nice. When we traveled, they gave the players the first class, and some places give the coaches first class. But other than that, and maybe some, honestly, Jeff Fisher was a great players coach. I mean, he used to, I think, enjoy some of the camaraderie that probably isn't allowed nowadays. But the players coaches definitely had a little hand in that as well.
Was there an offensive lineman that you would sort of dread playing against, someone that always sort of brought the fight to you every Sunday? Or is
listen, I got to be teammates with him, Walter Jones. I mean, you'd beat him in a pass rush, you're like, oh shit, it must be a draw. He was a large human. He had smooth feet. He just moved, and he was a super nice guy. I mean, a great guy. If you ask him for something, needs some help with something, he'd help you out.
It's always funny with Walter. There's the one block in the 2005 NFC Championship game against the Panthers where he just brings the guy, I think, from the 15-yard line down to the goal line. I've never seen anything like that since. So that answer makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
This one's
he
kind of
deserved the parking spot. He had his own spot right up front. And he
oh yeah.
deserved it. Yeah.
This one's kind of in the same venue. Did you have a favorite quarterback to chase in your time? Was there a guy that you enjoyed bringing down, or is it just kind of all the same? They were all, dollar signs for you.
Well, the ones I like hitting the most were the ones that kind of like little whiny bitches, and the ones that were cool, and we'd hang out, and there's some that I'm still friends with, I guess I wouldn't probably give that little extra oomph on those guys, maybe whether it's conscious or subconscious, but I think you can figure out who those little whiny bitches are.
Uh, you know, do you have any regrets from your career? Is there anything that you wish you would have gone back and done, or are you kind of satisfied with where the journey had taken you?
No, and this is, and I wouldn't say recent, but relatively recent, that I have my own business and responsible for hundreds of people's, livelihood. Looking back, I wish, and I know I could have been a better teammate. I could have been more coachable. I could have been more learning based. You know what I mean? But I think that's, everyone kind of matures their own age, their own pace. But I know I could go back and do a much better job helping my teammates more, because that concept of, people always say it, the more you give, the more you get, and people say it, but I don't know if they really mean it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But until you're truly immersed, in it and buy into it, because I was, maybe I wasn't all the way in retrospect. And looking back now, I'd love to go back and redo it and really help my teammates. I always helped guys, worked out with guys, watched tape with guys, never said no, but I think I could do a much better job being a better teammate.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to wrap up the NFL portion before we head over to the little Seahawks stuff I've got, how did you know that it was time for you to hang the cleats up? Was there sort of a moment, a hit you took where it was like, hey, this feels different? Or just, spending time with family? What was that moment that kind of let you decide, hey, I'm done with it?
Well, I truthfully just really want a Super Bowl ring. I could have retired, at the Jags if we would have won a Super Bowl that year. And being a part of away from my family during the season sucked because my kids were old enough where I didn't want to move them in and out of schools. It wasn't fair. So I would be gone a lot, in those last, 3 seasons. And it just sucks when you're sitting in some city away from your family and, what's going on and what's, even the shitty days. I miss the shitty days, we had to yell to the kids. So to me, I was just like, listen, the Super Bowl ring and the family outweighed it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So just a few things with the Seahawks here. I know you talked about it a little bit, but ultimately, how do you reflect on your time with Seattle? I know some of those teams had guys, you talk about Walter Jones. I know some of them, I believe, Lofa Tatupu, Deion Branch, Sean Alexander. How do you look at your time in Seattle ultimately, looking back on it?
So Seattle was obviously, it's almost its own country for people that haven't traveled out of Seattle. Especially a guy coming from, Michigan and then to Texas and then to Seattle. I mean, I tell the story sometimes to people. We first moved into our little 3-story, or it was the 3rd floor of this little building on the backside of Lake Washington and Kirkland. That's when the stadium or practice was down the other place. And per usual, I just went and, put all the garbage at the road, bagged it all up, I'm not thinking anything of it, it looked nice, I bagged it and tagged it. And a few of the neighbors came up to me and were like, hey, we recycle here, and I'm like, recycle? I remember telling my wife, I'm like, these damn hippies, and I knew nothing about recycling. And they, then I was like, oh shit, I don't want to be that neighbor. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay. So I'm like, all right. They're like, we'll show you how to do everything. There was like 16 containers, I swear, at the time, and I'm like, I'm shaking my head about it, but I did it, of course. And I think the neighbors were appreciative of me making an effort. And I think in return, one of the neighbors brought me a peace joint, like a appreciation joint as a thank you. But the takeaway is, and there's a lot of other little cultural things that, that influence, especially when you're a young man and a young marriage and young kids, that influence you that you don't realize till later. But, like even now, like we got 2 recycle cans and 1 small garbage can. You know what I mean? There's things that influence you and your person because of the perspective you get at a young age that kind of carries you with.
That's, someone who's lived here my whole life. The peace joint thing is the funniest. That is great. That's great. Um, how would you describe playing for Mike Holmgren? I know you talked about a couple of other coaches, you've played with, but I know that I think in that 2007 season, it was Mr. Holmgren. What can you say
Yeah,
about him?
he's definitely a great coach. And I was kind of the stepchild, truth be told. I don't know if I've told this story very often, but that was the year after he lost the role of being head coach and general manager. And the general manager traded for me. And apparently Mike didn't want to trade for me. He wanted
Oh,
he wanted much bigger, larger defensive ends. So I think his words were, "I didn't trade for you. Don't think you're going to see the field." That was our first meeting. But I didn't let that slow me down. But he
uh,
was right.
that is, huh? Yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense when it's, not how you're running the team and you show up, guy that you don't want necessarily shows up.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I had a great preseasons, crushed it. I led the NFL in preseasons, both preseasons there. But that's life. Life's not fair sometimes.
Ultimately, what do you remember most from your time spent with the Seahawks? Was it, spending time with Patrick? Obviously you talk about how the city itself was, but what do you remember most from your time with Seattle?
There was such great teammates there. I mean, and I was only there 2 years, and the friendships and relationships that I have, and you don't just keep up with everybody, but then when your paths do cross, whether it's an event or just a happenstance, and you see them, and like, oh, it's just you pick up right where you left off. It was just a group of guys. So I definitely enjoyed that.
So, and then I want to wrap up a little bit here with the off the field stuff. How did Red Zone Realty Group come to fruition with your former Jaguars teammate Kyle Bosworth? How did that ultimately come into play?
So I have always been into building properties, buying them, renovating them, fixing them up, getting my hands dirty. And as I started to grow my portfolio, I realized that the good deals you get, you don't get them when you find them on the listings, MLS. You find them because, oh, I got a guy that's getting ready to sell it, like, oh, I'll buy it, don't list it. So I kind of wanted that aspect of it, and that's why I started. And then I have a property management division to take care of my properties, but then it kind of started turning into something else. People wanted to be around what was going on, and it got to the point where my bandwidth was stretched. So I had to start building a team. So I brought in he's a coach. He has his own coaching staff to coach the agents. And they coach the teams. And we have training class for young agents. Now we have recruiters, we have operations managers. So as it grew, I realized that I couldn't serve everybody the way I wanted to serve everybody, and I needed help. And thankfully, I've been able to assemble a really awesome team to help any and all agents that want to improve.
Can you talk a little bit about your ranch? I think you might have touched on it a little bit, but I know that, keeping your hands full with your sons and then the realty aspect of it. Well, can you talk a little bit about the ranch?
So we don't have it anymore, but we used to have a
Oh,
really cool
okay.
ranch that when we lived in Texas, it didn't make sense not being in Texas anymore. But it was pretty cool. We used to have some cattle as well too, and I bred some Wagyu bulls to some Brangus heifers, and we would have some really delicious beef.
Oh,
So
damn. And then so ultimately, I think you've touched on it already, but do you want to go in any more into coaching? I mean, are you happy with it with just your boys, or have you thought about doing that at a different level? Or are you just kind of happy with where you're at?
well, no, when I retired, I turned down a few opportunities, but I knew that it would be worse as a coach. I mean, I wouldn't be home at all. But I do enjoy coaching. Obviously, because my kids are there, so I could be around them more from a selfish standpoint. But I don't think I would get my toe back into coaching.
That's the end of my thing. So I always put socials in the description, as well as I'll link your realty group here. Is there anything else you want to sort of leave me with here, just to wrap things up?
One of the cool things that we just started franchising, and we have a franchise rolled out in Texas and Michigan, and one getting ready to come in Aspen. And it's a really cool opportunity for like-minded individuals that have that same kind of mentality, that want something more, that want to grow, that want to learn, that want to improve, that want to help others. So it's it's a little different model, but people know when they come to red zone whether they fit in or don't fit in. Not to say that if you don't fit in, you're not good, but it's definitely got it's a culture, and it's very purposeful.
Well, I will make sure to put that down in the description of this. With that being said, Jason, I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely, man. Awesome.